Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of The Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I have one of my very good friends here today. Her name is Lissette Santana. She does lots of very important jobs for PPL, our power company locally, and she does lots of important jobs for our community. And I've just been so blessed to know her the last, I don't know, it's been 7 or 8 years at least now. So Lissette, welcome.
Yeah, really fast. Thank you for having me.
All right, so since you have two fairly significant titles, could you please tell us what they are?
So I have a dual role at PPL. For PPL Corporation, I am the Senior Manager of Corporate Relations and Sustainability. I'm trying to think about it because I just got that title.
Congratulations.
One of the reasons I like working there is that I kind of switch up my jobs every couple of years, so I'm never bored. And then my other role there is overseeing the foundation, so I am the Chief Operating Officer of the PPL Foundation.
Which is such a big deal because the foundation does so much for this community, and you've been involved for a really long time. Really?
Well, since the inception of the foundation, which was in 2015. So
Wow.
It's actually really new, even though PPL has been giving back to the community.
You do so much in the community.
I know.
You know.
Yeah, we were trying to look back. We actually had this question from a reporter, like, when was the first time PPL contributed to the United Way campaign? And we had to look, we have this history book, and it was back like when we were founded in 1920. So since then, we've been active in the community. So
that's just continuing the tradition.
Continuing the tradition.
All right. Well, Lissette, we have a lot of crossover in the community, but I want to talk a little bit about you as a person and your childhood and where you grew up. So tell me a little bit about where are you from?
I am from a couple blocks away from here, actually. I grew up in South Bethlehem, right off of 412. I went to Freedom, so I'm one of those boring people who like literally never left home.
Not boring, interesting.
I remember like being younger and having all these dreams of like, I'm gonna live in the big city, and then like visiting my friends who lived in the big city and totally hating it. So I was like, oh, maybe not. And then I ended up, my first job was in journalism. That was my background. I went to Penn State. So my first job offer was for the Express Times in Easton. And so I'm like, well, I got a job offer, let me take it. And so I came back home and I have not left.
Tell me a little bit about your family as a kid growing up. Do you have siblings? Who did you live with?
Yeah, I am the oldest of 3. So I have 2 younger brothers who are like the bane of my existence, but I love them.
You keep everybody in line.
Well, you know, I was the oldest. I had to kind of,
we've lamented about being the oldest and what it is to be the oldest.
You have like, I'll give you an example. So I remember getting a license and wanting to get a new car, and I had to work and save up for a car. And so like I was totally impatient, and all I could save up was like $800. So I ended up getting a 1980 Chevy Chevette.
Ooh, what color?
It was blue and blue.
Ooh.
There's a really interesting story about that later. Yeah, so it was like light blue on the top, dark blue on the bottom.
Wow.
And 3 months after having this car, which I bought with my own money, I crashed it.
Oh my gosh.
My dad's like, I'll fix it, don't worry. I was like, oh God. My dad's like colorblind, or maybe not colorblind, just doesn't care about colors, we don't know. So he fixing it in the garage. I never looked. And one day he comes up and he's like, I fixed the car, it's done. And I couldn't. I was like, Mom, please, you go look. And so she comes back upstairs and she's like, well, it's definitely the same color. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm like, go down. It was the same colors, except he got the fenders so that they were dark blue on the top and light blue on the bottom. So my car looked like a checkerboard.
Oh my gosh.
So
and that's what you drove around?
Oh, hell yeah, I drove that around. I was the only one with the car, so we were like, okay.
Just take
it took me a while. I took the bus for a little bit because I was embarrassed, and then I started driving it at night.
But then it was kind of like your car, right? People probably knew they had
Checkers.
Nice.
So I had a name, Checkers, the Chevy Chevette.
That's so great.
Hey, next kid in line, he's like, gets my mom's like Ford Taurus, which is not a fancy car, but he didn't even have to
have worked and
saved.
He
didn't have to do anything. He just got the car. And then the third one, he just like, oh, I want a Jeep Wrangler, and boop, he got a Jeep Wrangler.
Amazing how it happens.
Yeah,
isn't
it just
And the
happens.
rules seem to loosen too as they go down the line.
Yeah.
So tell me about yourself as a kid. Like, what were you like as a kid? What were you into? Describe yourself.
I was into a lot of the things I'm into now. My mom was really crafty, so we did a lot of crafts, and I'm a very good cook. We loved to travel even then, even though back then it was just road trips because, it's expensive to travel with 3 kids. So my dad would just kind of like put us in the truck and we're off and just have adventures. I was always very bossy and a little bit of a rabble rouser. So, I haven't changed much.
I knew. This is one of the reasons we get along so well. What about school? What were you into in school?
My favorite subject was definitely English. I always wanted to be a writer. And I always wanted to give back, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to do those 2 things. So actually, the job I'm doing now is just like a perfect combination of all the things I wanted to do. So I would have, if you tell 10-year-old Lissette, this is going to be your job, I was like, that's a job? That's possible? I wouldn't even have thought that was a thing I could do. So
isn't that neat to be living
really cool.
like your dream and what you love and passionate about?
Yeah.
What about hobbies, or did you play any sports? Did you play any
instruments?
instruments?
Well, I played the piano.
Okay.
I was not a sports person. My brothers played soccer, and literally it consumed our life because they were really good at it. So we were always at tournaments and all that, and that was not my thing. I was a glee kid. I was in choir, and we did the traveling choir, and we would sing at old folks' home. Yes.
Oh, that's fun.
I know, it was super fun. So yeah, I was into music and the arts and writing and just being creative. So that was my thing.
And your family is from the Dominican Republic.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that and who came over and who's still there.
Oh my gosh. Well, my grandmother came over probably in the 50s, and then slowly brought all of her kids over, and there was 8 of them. So that's my dad's mom. She recently passed away, but she went back. So she kind of came here, worked here for 40 years. When she retired, she went back to the Dominican Republic. All my aunts and uncles have kind of been slowly moving back. My parents retired and moved back there. They have this wonderful ranch, where they have cows and chickens, and they grow their own food, and they're just living the life. So they love it. But we used to go back every year when we were kids. And actually, the only other place I've lived besides the Lehigh Valley is the Dominican Republic, because my parents got divorced when I was in 2nd grade. My mom moved us down there. We lived there for a year, which I'm glad because I learned Spanish.
Okay, well that's good.
And then they got back together, and then we moved back, and we're like, oh, okay. So it was just kind of this little blip.
I love that part of your story because to me, I don't know. Lots of people with divorced parents.
Yeah.
But how many people have you met that the parents got
together.
divorced and got back together?
And so I like to joke. I've only been at one of their weddings because, as far as I know. So we weren't at the first one, and then we were the witnesses for the second wedding that they had at the Justice of the Peace.
That's so cool.
And then I remember being in college, and my dad had prostate cancer, so my mom was flipping out, and she wanted to renew their vows, but I didn't know any of this. I just called home one day, and my cousin answers, my cousin from Long Island. I'm like, what are you doing at the house? She's like, I'm here for the wedding. Whose wedding? And she's like, your mom and dad. I'm like, what? How come I wasn't invited?
Second. Your parents?
No, my mom's like, I didn't think you'd want to come.
They just didn't tell you? Because you were at college.
I was at college. She's like, I didn't think you'd want to come all the way.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't a big deal. I'm like, what? Yeah, they had a little party and everything. I'm like, well, all right, thanks. So I've only been to one of their weddings.
1 out of 3. I can't believe it. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, so they're crazy. They've been married for 46 years.
When did you decide, you knew you liked English, when did you realize that translated into writing? And was it a school thing, or did you do something like the paper?
So when my parents were cleaning up the house to move, downsizing, my mom hands me this box. So I've always been a writer. And it had all these little books that I had written from the time I was 4, 5, little books,
really?
Stories about squirrels, and I have this one about, it was kind of like Sweet Valley High, but it was a haunted.
That was good.
There was it was a horror version. Oh my gosh, yeah. So I've always been a writer, and I think one of my teachers in high school really kind of encouraged that in me. She's like, I think you would be really good at this. I'm like, yeah, but how do you make money writing? Ever pragmatic, the daughter of immigrants. I was like, I can't make money doing that. So I decided to become a communications major. I majored in it. Hated it. Did not like being on camera. I wanted to be the next Murphy Brown.
Yeah,
I know.
And we dragged you back.
So, and it's funny, I end up being on camera. I'm on camera all the time now, and I
in your job. Isn't that
not
funny?
my thing, but yes. So I was like, what can I do? I still want to like kind of do this. And so I segued into business administration and English. So the English was for me. The business ad was for my parents so that they, they could feel like I'd graduate and
Smart
get paid.
though, because what's funny is I always say that my one sort of educational regret is that I didn't minor in business or take more business classes. And I didn't really know that I would. I mean, I was in journalism and I thought I'd work in that field, but I never thought of owning my own production company.
Right.
And the hardest part is the business side that you're constantly trying to learn. So it's really good that you had that as a foundation.
Like, I tend to like think, and I don't know. I don't play chess, so people are like, "Oh, you're like a chess player." I'm like, I don't know what that means. Okay,
you think a few steps ahead.
I do think ahead. Like I'm like, what will I need 10 years from now? Like even now, like I bought my house. It's a ranch. Because I'm like, I don't want to be like, 70 and have to move.
Right.
Buy a house with no stairs. I don't know. I'm a planner.
You're a planner. I am too. So I totally understand that.
I'm like, well, if the English thing doesn't work out, at least I'll have this other major. And so that's what I ended up with a focus on like PR. I ended up going back to school in 2011. I got my master's from George Washington University. So
very nice.
Specifically
and what was your master's in?
Did you public relations.
In public relations. Okay,
because I didn't really study that. So I'm like, let me see. And, it was just kind of like a pleasant surprise because a lot of what I was doing, just kind of like winging it, was the right approach. So it was a nice validation there.
I was just going to say kind of affirmation that you knew what you were doing. Tell me a little bit about that year that you lived in the Dominican. You were like second grade age, and you did not speak Spanish. So Spanish was not spoken at home.
Yeah, so this is very common. Like now when I talk to people, like, that was like a very common experience of that time. So my mom moved here in the 70s. So my dad had lived here. He went to NYU. He lived in New York, so he knew English. He went back on vacation, met my mom, fell in love. They courted by letters. So that's how they got to know each other, which I'm like, blows my mind.
I just want you to know that actually Joe and I courted by letters
my mom's first like real date was like her honeymoon. I'm like, what?
Okay, we didn't go that far.
That's crazy.
But
I know. So
but I do have a box of letters. We each have a box from the other. So yeah.
And then like he brought her back. They got married, and he brings her to Brooklyn, and she's like, "Oh no, I'm not living here. Like whatever, I'm going back. You figure something out." And so he's like, "Wait, I have a cousin that like lives in this little town in Pennsylvania. Let's go visit." And that's it. She loved it. She loved Bethlehem, and so they ended up here. And then when they got divorced and we moved there, let me back up. So she didn't really know English. So this is again one of those funny things where like her worst subject was English. Like she had to they had it as a class and she hated it. So she's like, whatever. It was the only thing she didn't get straight A's in. And here she ends up living
in America. And she's got to learn English.
So she had to learn English. So she would talk to us in Spanish, but make us answer her in English. So we understood.
Oh, but you couldn't speak.
But I couldn't speak it, and I could speak it. I like to say I'm fluent in Spanglish. Like I can talk Spanglish with the best of them, but Spanish is a little tougher. But
so you get down to the Dominican Republic, you can understand everybody, but you can only sort of
and little type A Lissette was not going to fail second grade just because she couldn't understand Spanish. So I buckled down. And I remember reading the paper. Like I really forced myself to learn it.
What an incredible experience as a kid, though. I mean, do you feel like there was something now with hindsight that you could look back on and say, I'm grateful for that experience because?
I mean, honestly, I'm grateful for the experience because I learned Spanish. We learned like a whole new way of how people live. Like you do not understand poverty unless you've lived in a third world country, and that's what it is. We weren't poor, but you would see that even just like going to school or just like a different perspective on just basic things. Like we're all in our cars when we're commuting. Like commuting there is like literally like 20 people getting into like this little minivan with like no doors and like barreling down the highway. It's just like a completely different way of life, and so it just opens up your mind to like there are different ways to live. So I'm very appreciative of that. And honestly, my parents got back together and they never fought ever again.
Isn't that amazing?
It was like, I don't know what happened. Whatever.
That's amazing.
That was like lovey-dovey.
And now they're back in the Dominican Republic, and you get down there, once or twice a year? I try to go down like
once a year. My dad is an accountant, so he comes up here like every, from January to April.
I was going to say, you're in the sweet spot of your dad's time with accounting.
So he comes up every now and again. He's actually here now. He's leaving next week. My mom does not come back, but until summertime. So she'll come back in the summer.
She doesn't want to deal with the cold.
Yeah,
she's
done
used
with
to
the cold.
Yeah,
now.
oh, that's
Yeah.
great. So you now know that you love English. You are in school. You're studying. You have business. What's your first job? I think you mentioned
My first
Express
job
Times.
was Express Times.
Okay.
And
Now,
so,
meanwhile, you've got this backup plan with business, but you end up getting a job.
Yeah, I didn't want to
journalism.
be a journalist, but I worked at the Collegian for all 4 years because it was like a nice extracurricular and it was fun and I actually liked it. Like, I liked the behind the scenes thing. I just didn't want to be like, hi, I'm,
Right.
on the daily newscast. I didn't want to be Ashley.
Well, you know what's
you
so
were
funny?
so good at it.
Thanks. But you know what's funny is I didn't set out to do this either.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, when I was in school, people would say, "Well, are you going to go, try to get a reporter job wherever?"
Mm-hmm.
And because I was a broadcast journalism major, but I loved producing. I loved the writing, the planning.
Yeah.
Like I felt like being a planner, I could get it
Yeah.
all. And when I did an internship, I had the opportunity to kind of exercise that part of myself, and I was like, "Oh, this is what I love.
Yeah.
This is the part I love. I love the planning. I like the pre-interviews. I liked all that stuff." So until I moved to the Lehigh Valley,
You weren't
I
doing
was
that.
really pretty much
Yeah.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So,
I tell
yeah.
people that all the time. We do a lot of education outreach at work, and so I feel like kids think they need to have it all figured out by the time they're 18 and like
Yeah.
freshmen in college. I'm like, you're not going to figure that out ever. Like,
And even what you're
just
doing
need
at-
to kind of wing it because
Yeah.
you never know what's going to happen, what opportunity is going to present itself, or like, so I just feel like that they have this pressure now because it's so competitive, like to like, I have to know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life.
And even if you think
You're
you
just
know
never-
at 22 or 25, like life ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Things come at you.
And so like I've always done what I've been passionate about, and I feel like when you look at it, like when I look back, it does look like there was like a clear path, but I didn't even know this kind of job existed when I first started out. So yeah, I started out as a reporter. I did that for 4 years. I was like making zero money. It's crazy. And it was just you're
now, were
always
you
on.
living on your own, or were you
Yes,
living at
so
home?
I only lived at home for 6 months after that before me and my parents drove each other crazy because like I was like, woohoo, freedom at college, and then I came back and my parents were Catholic, very strict. I couldn't do anything, couldn't have phone calls after 8, like, oh my
wow.
God, seriously. So it was just, yeah.
Time to get my
So
own place.
I had to have my own place. So I had an apartment in downtown Easton. It was like super cool. We could walk to the office. It felt very like city living, like,
Nice. Yeah.
little piece
What
of
was
that.
your beat? Did you have a beat?
My beat was the business.
Okay.
And I made a lot of
Interesting.
connections
There you
that
go.
way. And actually, I got my job. I remember interviewing. My next job from that was at Crayola. And I remember interviewing the corporate communications director at Crayola. And so I interviewed him. We built up a rapport. And then this job opened up and I applied. And I had that connection with him.
That's
So
it.
That's
the
how
name
it
of the
happened.
game.
Yep.
And what did you do at Crayola?
So I did communications and everything from like planning toy fair like events, which were super fun. We had, like I would do like press conferences at the Toys R Us in Times Square, which sadly doesn't exist anymore, but just like fun things like that, planning toy fair.
Yeah, we're so spoiled here because Crayola is located right here in the
Yes.
Lehigh Valley. And so we sort of think it's just like second nature to everybody that Crayola is in their
Right.
backyard, but we forget that the Crayola is this like worldwide famous
Worldwide,
brand.
yeah.
So working there must have really opened your eyes
Yeah,
to
it was
what
so
was possible.
fun. And like one of the things I had to do was kind of like do a monthly marketing call with our colleagues that were like, throughout the globe. So we would have someone from the UK and someone from Australia and someone from Latin America on this call. I was like, oh yeah, it's not just a local brand, it's definitely a worldwide brand. And it was a great way to segue from newspapers to corporate communications because like no one hangs up on a pitch from Crayola. It's really easy. It like literally brings a smile to people's faces. So it was like so easy to pitch and write about, and it's creative, and it was just like a really fun, creative place to work. So it was a really nice transition for me.
What do you think you learned? What was the lesson that you took from that experience at Crayola and that job there?
From Crayola, I think the lesson I learned there is just kind of being creative. I mean, obviously, it's Crayola. It's all about creativity. That's just like ingrained in their culture. And every person who works there plays a role. And I had not having worked at a corporation before, it was kind of like, it was a little eye-opening to me. Like literally, no matter what you're doing, it's all really going for the greater good. So it was just a really good stepping stone to my next step.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I guess that piece of working in a larger company and seeing the way the infrastructure is set up and how that influences what you might want to do or what steps you take next. And so, how did you make the leap to PPL, and when did you know it was sort of time for that?
So this, it was one of those things that ended up being good, but was a mistake when I first did it. So Crayola, great company, loved it, but I felt a little limited there because it's such a small company. Now, if I was married and didn't have to pay my own mortgage, I'd probably still be there. And I still have friends there. Like, I still talk to all my friends at Crayola, and it was like 15, maybe 16 years ago. So it was a great, great place to work. But I worked for the communications director who reported up to the CEO. I was like, oh, unless he leaves,
where am I going to go? Right.
Where am I going to go? Yeah. And he's still there. So I definitely was not going to go anywhere. So I saw a job opening at another place, and I was just like, and it was for a manager position. I wasn't even a manager yet. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. See if, immediately it was like the wrong move. It was not the place for me. It was just not a good fit. But what are you going to do? You don't really know until you're there. So I definitely was trying to find my place in a different company. And actually one of the things I had to do there was write the communications for downsizing. So I'm like, oh, and it was going to be based on seniority. So I'm like, I'm definitely going to be downsized. But so I'm writing the communications, talking to the executives. I'm like, I know that I'm going to, so kind of knew.
You're waiting.
And then one of the people in our department, she was so awesome. And this is why I try myself to just really make connections with women in the workplace, especially if it's not that many women to begin with. You really need to support each other. So this woman in our department who I didn't report to her, didn't really work with her, she calls me and she's like, I saw this job opening at PPL and I think you should apply. I was like, PPL? I don't think I'm going to qualify for that. I applied for that a couple years ago. She's like, that was a couple years ago. Apply again. Okay, she definitely knows something I don't. She was higher up than me. I'm like, let me apply. I got the word that I was losing my job on a Friday. Had a wine fest with my friends. I called my girlfriend. I'm like, I just got fired. And they're like, but we'll be there in 20 minutes. And, brought food and wine and had our commits. And on Monday morning, I got a call from PPL for an interview.
That's amazing.
So it was just kismet.
Oh my gosh. And how long have you been there now?
15 years.
Wow.
I know.
So tell me a little bit about the work that you do. And I know that you wear a lot of hats at PPL. In fact, I often think you do the job of 5 people. And you've learned a lot over the years. So tell me a little bit about the job that you started in and where you've come to.
So one of the reasons I've never been bored there is because I kind of have a new role every couple of years. I've been very lucky to have bosses that were supportive or saw something in me that maybe I didn't think I was ready for. And
gave you opportunity.
It's also not in my nature to say I can't do something. So even if I don't know what the heck I'm doing, I'm just I'll figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't, of course, yeah, I can do that, and I'll figure it out later. So kind of had the chance to kind of move around a little bit. So I started as an employee communications specialist. So I was basically just doing, employee profiles for our internal communications. We do have a quarterly newsletter that goes out to all our employees. It's like a magazine. And then we have our daily internet site, which we update daily with constant content. So it was a lot. And at that time we had power plants. So, it was a lot of traveling and getting to know the company, profiling people that worked for different parts of the company.
Which is kind of fun. You're
so
young,
it was so
you're in your
fun.
third, fourth job.
And it was a really great way to get to know the company, because you're literally traveling around to all the different places and meeting retirees and all of that stuff. So it was wonderful. So I did that for 2 years. Then I did, because I had been going around to all the power plants, I was like, hey, do you want to just do the communications for the power plants? Okay, so I did that. Worked with our renewable energy team, who, coincidentally, the guy who led the renewable energy team, that was my beat for a while. He was married to the woman who I reported to when I was at Crayola. Again,
really?
Small world.
Yeah, well, the Valley's a little
seriously,
like that.
You can don't ever make anyone mad. You just never know, where you're
that's really good life advice. Now, do you think you inherently knew that, or do you think that you learned that on the job?
I learned that on the job. Like, I mean, I think I got my first job because I made that connection, right? Like with Eric, I met him just interviewing him, and then like when it came to like my interview for the job, he's like, oh, I remember you. Like, you know, that connection.
So that
like,
the power of
connection.
connection.
Was just like, wow, okay. My job at PPL, when I was the person who hired me, the hiring manager for that position, happened to be married to the best friend of one of my colleagues at Crayola. So she had talked very pleasantly about me. He's like, he remembered the names when he saw me. And he's like, oh, do you know Susan? I'm like, of course. And those connections that you make along the way, even if you don't think you're making an impression or making that connection, that stays with people.
Yeah, and that's such
really
great
does.
advice for people who are out there listening that are in their career, whether you're starting out or further along.
Mm-hmm.
People are remembering and watching.
People remember that, even like the smallest interactions. So,
Pay attention.
And I'm a very blunt person, so like I feel like sometimes I don't give the best first impression to people. I'm just very honest. No, I
Not
know.
you.
I've been told I've been too honest sometimes. So I
Well,
think,
it's just
yeah,
one more
that's
thing you and I have in common. We should say for people who are listening and not watching this, we are actually dressed almost identical in exact same color blue jeans, exact same ankle black boots, very similar. We both have black tops on. It's so
Yeah,
funny.
no. Yeah.
Now, one difference I just want to bring up is that you have this gorgeous, stunning hair.
Oh, thank
It
you.
is long and curly and flowing, and in recent years you have let the gray come in.
I have let
and
the
it
gray
is
come in.
gorgeous.
Thank
and
you.
I have not been bold enough to do that, so I
It's
always
super
tell you
scary.
it is scary, and I so admire
And it shouldn't be. I feel like it should. I just was like, it was like a personal thing. Like, I know a lot of guys who are way younger than me who like have gray hair, and people are like,
And
oh,
no
it
one
looks
cares.
so cool. And I remember and I've been dyeing my hair since I was like in my 20s. I've had gray since I was in my 20s. So I was like, oh my gosh, the first time I saw one, I was like, get the hair dye. And I remember, I think it was like 3 years ago, I think I started this process. And at that point, it was getting to like I had to do it every 3 weeks. And
I'm
so
there.
I would go to
I'm
a
with
salon
you.
sometimes, and it was like super expensive. And I'm like, I'm like, let me just do it myself. And I'm like, you know, I have the old ratty t-shirt on, and I have the plastic on the floor and the sink, and I'm holding this stuff. I'm like, I'm done with this. I just threw it away.
that was it.
And that was it. And it was really, really hard. It was really, really hard. And then like, so it's weird, like who comments on it. So like guys do not care at all.
Not interesting.
It's other women who are like,
Well,
oh,
yeah,
are you
because
gonna do
it's-
something
you
about
know
your
what?
hair? Like,
Oh, see, now it's
you
funny
gonna
is for
do
me.
it? And I'm
I
like,
never
well,
thought,
but
like, do it. I just think, like, I want to be like you. Like, when am I going to be ready to
there-
make the leap?
Not
for me,
everybody
I admire
has that
it.
reaction.
Well,
And then, like, I remember, like, a year in, there was my friend's son who didn't recognize me. I don't look that different.
no, you do not.
And
it's
he's
still,
like, but I think if I
subtle.
had it back,
Okay.
if you put it back, it's really,
It's really great.
more
Okay.
obvious.
It's beautiful, though.
But when I straighten it, it looks like highlights. It's very pretty. So he was just like, oh my God, you look so old. And I was like, that was the only moment where I was like, oh my God, I'm going to dye it again. And my friends would have me. She's like, don't you dare. Don't.
No way.
She's like, he's
no
8.
Way.
He doesn't
I
know
totally
anything.
Agree. I love it so much.
So.
Tell me about, like, you talked about being bold and outspoken and being a little bit precocious as a kid. And so it's sort of part of who you are. Tell me about what parts of your personality have served you really well, especially as a female in the workplace, a minority female in the workplace. And tell me what parts of your personality you feel like you've had to adapt or change to a circumstance.
So, and I think over the years I've definitely toned it down a little bit. My
mother calls it softening, if you'd like to
Softening is
know.
very-
Candy says soften.
I love
little
your
Ashley.
mom. She's the best. So anything she recommends, I will totally do.
She uses that word, which I like because a lot of times, people say to bold women, they say it in a way that feels demeaning and taking something from you. But when you use the word soften, it just it feels gentle.
That's
so
good.
That's her
So,
word.
and I have softened over the years, and I think that just comes with age. Like I just, when you're in your 20s, you think you know everything, and you know what all the problems are, and how you're going to solve them. And then I realize that's not true. There's always room for
life throws you around.
Life throws you around a little bit. So I think I've softened it a little bit. But I definitely think that confidence helps me kind of get through. Like when I first joined PPL, I mean, I would be in meetings, and I started at a time like for maybe a period of like 10 years, and not just PPL, almost all utilities are like this, hadn't hired anyone for like 10 years. So there was this huge gap in age. They didn't really have anyone, like they didn't have Gen Xers, so they had a lot of boomers and then like nothing in between. So they started hiring again. So I would walk into a room where it was like maybe 30 men in their 50s, and here I am, some like 28-year-old, like, you have to be assertive, you have to kind of like present yourself in a way that they'll, you know, take notice. So
what is your advice for young women who find themselves in that circumstance, which still happens quite a bit?
It does.
As to how to really have a voice and a seat at the table?
I just think you need to be, I was always prepared. So I wouldn't ever want anyone to catch me not knowing something, but that's just my personality. So I could never, people wouldn't ever be able to say I was not prepared, or, you know, I didn't know what I was talking about.
You weren't going to give people any excuse.
Yeah, I couldn't give them an excuse for that. Like, so I knew, and I would always go into meetings prepared. Like, I knew what I was talking about. And I think that also helps with the confidence things. Like, you're prepared, you got this. You know, there's no reason for anyone to question you just because of your age or because of your gender. And then over time, you just gain that respect. Like, you know, you come to meetings and you're prepared and you know what you're talking about and you help solve problems instead of create problems. I think then your reputation just becomes that of like, okay, well, she knows what she's doing, and then they stop questioning you. So.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's really good advice. And I like you've alluded to a number of times this concept of seizing opportunities. So speak to me a little bit about that. Like this, as life presented you things, what was your take on what was in front of you?
I'm trying to think of a specific one. Because I feel like this job that I have now, like, I was definitely probably not at all prepared for this. Like, I didn't know anything about philanthropy. And like, what? I don't. And I just remember, you know, Dan McCarthy, you know Dan.
Of course.
You know, like, oh, I think I'm going to, and he was my manager at the time. He's like, we're going to give you the charitable giving stuff. I'm like, wow, okay, sure. And then just kind of like immersing myself in that world and like trying to figure out, like, okay, I got to figure this out and I'm going to do it. Let me do my research. Let me talk to people. So I reached out to people. I like, you know, all the other people in the Lehigh Valley who do this, other people at different power companies who do it.
And what did you find when you reached out?
Because they're all winging it too.
Yeah, everybody's winging it. I love it. You know, what's funny is that you say that is because I feel like for those of us who know you in the community, in a lot of ways, you really represent philanthropy and community service. And you do, and you walk the walk, you know, you talk the talk.
I try.
And it surprises me to feel like hear you say, well, I was winging it, because it just seems so part of you now. But
Right.
I love that, because if you hadn't taken the opportunity,
I've always given back. So I think that's probably what Dan was seeing as well. Is like, I've always been very passionate about the community. And again, I know like I had a pipe dream about moving to New York at one time, but one of my other like probably realer dream was I want to come back and give back to the community. I want to be able to make an impact. I didn't know what that looked like. So to be able to do it now at the scale that I'm doing it because of representing PPL in the community, it's amazing. Like, I would have never thought I'd be able to do it. Like, you know, at most I thought I'd be running like an after school program. Now I'm helping countless after school programs. So it's really amazing what I'm able to achieve with PPL's support. And the support of the foundation.
I love that, and I think that, you know, you look at something, we do a lot of work together with like Any Given Child in Bethlehem or United Way, and
Right.
those kinds of organizations have such a ripple effect in our community. What do you say to people who are, I don't know, apprehensive about getting involved, whether it's donating their time or donating money? Like, what do you say when you're kind of pitching contribution?
Well, I definitely, if it's contribution of money, so I think United Way is a great example. Like, I think some people are hesitant, like, why should I give my money to, like, you know, an organization? How am I going to know that organization's doing the right thing? There's ways you can research that, but I feel like those nonprofits, they're like the feet on the ground. They know what the needs are, and they're the experts, like way more than me and you could be. You know, I can help out here and there and like, you know, channel funds that way, but I don't know half of what they know in terms of like what the needs are in the community through the data that they have and vetting the different
I feel like they're good stewards of my money, right?
So
like, you have resources.
I tell people that all the
Yeah.
time. I'm like, you don't have to like do all that research because you already have this organization doing that. They're the experts. So, do you make your contribution and know that it's safe. You don't have to feel like you're doing all this like legwork. Now, that said, if you want to give of your time, I think people have to find what they're passionate about because otherwise you need to be passionate about whatever that is, or you're just going to burn out, or it's just really not going to have meaning for you.
Yeah. And for you, what is that thing? What is, when you think of retiring or having more time? To me, it's definitely education. I feel like I am where I am because of education, and I'm a huge proponent of public schools. Like, I'm a product of public schools, and I feel like they're getting such short shrift, and so that is where I would focus. Your heart is there
that
with
is my
the
heart.
kids.
I kind of play with you. I'm like, oh, should I just go back to school and get a teaching degree? But I could never be a teacher. I hosted some teachers for an event on Monday, and I'm like trying to get them to be quiet. And they're teachers, not even kids. And I tried that trick that teachers do where they raise their hand and the finger. And they're like, that takes years of practice.
I have to tell you, someone gave me a whistle recently at an event, and I think it could be, how I clink the glass? Yeah. No more. I'm going all whistle. I'm all in for the whistle.
But I'm in awe of teachers. I'm like,
too.
That little trick with the fingers and the whole class stops. I'm like, how do you do that? So.
Tell us something about Lissette that nobody knows. What is a hobby or something you do in your free time?
Okay. My weirdest new hobby. I haven't really started yet. I'm only an apprentice. I'm trying to be a beekeeper.
Really? We happen to know several beekeepers.
I know.
Locally.
One of them is Sharon. Okay. So
Ken Sidlow over at St. Luke's
I didn't know
is a beekeeper at Black River Farms right here.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's where his bees are.
One of my friends, Sharon, keeps bees, and I was like, "What? You keep bees? How is this a thing?" And so she teaches the class. I took the class, but you have to apprentice before you can actually get your own hive. Yeah. And so I'm gonna be an apprentice beekeeper this year.
Good for you! I love it. That's amazing.
New hobby.
But you knit.
I do.
You're a big knitter.
Knit. I'm a big knitter. So I've been knitting for years and years and years. And I'm just going to give a shout out to Brooklyn Boy Knits, my best friend, who is now famous for knitting. But he makes it look so effortless. So yeah, I taught him how to knit, and then he became a viral sensation.
Well, what do they say about the teaching?
Yes,
imitation.
I just knit for fun. I'm just I don't want any pressure. I knit. Sometimes I make people gifts, but it's literally just a creative. It's a creative. It is to me, it's like meditation.
Yeah. What about travel? I know you love travel.
Travel everywhere. I'm going to Iceland this year.
Amazing.
So I'm super excited about that.
On my bucket list.
I know. I can't wait. And I think next year I'm going to do Morocco.
Ooh. That's my goal. Wow.
Let's do it, girls trip.
I love that. I would love to go to Morocco. What's a place that you've been that you love? I usually ask this in a rapid fire, but you are a traveling aficionado. So tell me the best place you've ever been.
Okay, my favorite place so far, and it's really hard, and it depends on what you're asking. Because if it's worldly European, then I can give you a place in Spain. My favorite place was Tulum 20 years ago. Tulum now is so sad and touristy, but 20 years ago when nobody knew what Tulum was, and me and my best friend literally stumbled upon it because we couldn't afford spring break, so we went in November after we saved money. We're well, let's just go in November. Okay. And there was nobody there, and the people at the resort in Cancun felt bad for us. They're you guys look bored. Do you want to go to this place called Tulum? We're okay, what's there? Some pyramid on the beach. Sounds awesome. So we go. He literally drops us off, and he's where, how did we get to the beach? He's oh, just walk through the pyramid and down the stairs of the pyramid? Yes. I'm is that allowed? He's just do it. Now it's all blocked off. It's overrun with tourists, but at that, we literally walked through a pyramid with no supervision, walked down the steps, hung out at the beach, ate suspicious beach tacos. Swam with tortoises, and it was amazing. And I tell people on this trip
one more
all the time,
and you seized opportunity.
Right? Exactly.
That's the key.
Now you think if I ever told my mom, don't listen to this podcast, she would be having a heart attack. Oh my God, you could have got kidnapped. It was 25 years ago. It didn't happen.
I think of a lot of circumstances of things that I did and travel, whatever, when I was young. Yeah. And I think, glad I wouldn't do that now.
That's the thing. Yeah, I would never do that now.
Yeah.
I would never do that now.
No.
Like,
But
sure,
you
we'll
had
get
that
in
experience.
a minivan with you, random stranger, and go 3 hours south in Mexico where we... No problem.
No problem.
It was super fun.
Wow. Can you believe we're getting to the age where we can say, remember when we did that thing?
My friends get really mad when they say, like, don't tell people how long we've known each other.
That's fine, right? It's a real crossover point, these 40s, though, because we're the same age. And, you know, it's such a crossover of life. So tell me, you've sort of expounded upon the first half. What does the second half look like?
Oh,
Like
gosh.
what is next for you? What are you gonna do next? Where are you gonna go next? Do you retire to the Dominican like your parents?
No. Oh gosh.
Okay.
Unless
Never
it's
say never?
Never say never,
Okay.
and unless it's like a beach condo.
Okay.
Even though I kind of
Could you get a beach condo just for like your friends?
I'm totally gonna get a beach condo.
Okay, great.
Yes, for sure. I already have them looking because I'm like, I wanted them to get a beach condo. I'm like, if you had a beach condo, I'd be down there way more. But they literally live in the middle of the jungle. Their closest neighbor is a convent, and the nuns have taken a vow of silence.
Oh wow, they're really remote. All right,
You
well,
can't
if
even
they
talk
do
to the
listen,
neighbors.
Lisette's friends are also voting for a beach condo.
Beach condo. Yeah.
All right, so what is the next, I don't know, 10 years
I
look
don't know.
like?
I feel like that's one of the things I've learned is like you just don't know. I just, I really don't know
Be
where
open
it's
to
going
the
to go. I'm
possibilities.
open to the possibilities.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah.
Well, if there's one bit of advice that you want to give to your younger self or to young women out there, like our wonderful producers in the room here today, what is the advice that you give to young women in their early 20s starting out?
The advice I give everybody is just like you don't have to figure it out right now. It's just gonna come. If you're following what you're passionate about, it's just gonna figure itself. Life will just kind of fall into place for you. And the other specific to women is just support each other. It's like we have it hard enough. Don't
True.
like seriously.
Don't cut each other down.
Don't cut each
Just
other
be
down.
psyched for what's
We have it
going
hard
on.
enough. So support each other. Yeah.
Awesome.
And just be nice to everybody because you never know who's like you're gonna be interviewing with later.
I love this. So, in a nutshell, you don't have to figure it all out. Support one another.
And be nice.
Be nice.
Be nice. I mean, it's easy.
Kind of good. That's
Easy
really
stuff.
good advice. I love that. All right, but before I let you go, I'm going to do a little rapid fire. Now, normally I ask people where they'd like to go, but you already hit that one and your favorite places. So, what I want to know is if you could have one meal, what would that one meal be? What's your absolute favorite food?
For like that's it. My last
That's
meal.
it. Yep. Last thing you could eat.
Okay, so my favorite thing to eat is mango, which is mashed plantains. It's like a Dominican thing, and you eat it with like fried cheese, which sounds gross, but it's like
Doesn't sound gross at all. Everything you're describing sounds delicious.
and sausage,
Do you
and then
make
like
this?
onion vinegar. Oh yeah, I make that all the time. I make it at least once a week because it's.
I
Like
mean,
my
I
favorite
don't
thing.
want to point this out, but like, so I don't have anything knit
It
by you,
isn't
and I've
gluten.
never
You
eaten
would
this
definitely
food.
be able to eat it.
I mean,
because
hello.
It's definitely gluten.
All right, next time we're making that. I want that.
Yes.
And if you could have dinner with anyone, living or deceased, who would you have dinner with?
that's
It could be a
hard.
couple people. You can throw a few at the table.
I don't. Oh my gosh. Gloria Steinem,
Okay, good one.
'cause I love her, and Barack Obama.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've
Good.
come so close to meeting both of them, so that's all right.
Well,
I'll have
speak
them
it
all
out
together.
there. Maybe it'll
Yes,
happen.
manifest.
I love it.
Yeah, I
that's
was
good.
literally sitting at a table with Gloria Steinem, but she was like at the far end of the table.
Oh, so close.
So close,
Okay,
so
well that feels almost
And my
like
brother
you had
has
dinner.
like met Barack, and my cousin has met Barack, and I shook Barack's hand, but I didn't actually meet him.
All right, well I think that all sort of counts. It's not the same as having dinner, but it's close.
It's not. Like I feel
No.
like it was like those moments where it was like, ooh, so close, and yet not
so
enough.
far. Well, it could happen.
Yeah.
We're only in our 40s. If you were not doing what you're doing now, what would you do as a living?
Something in school, but not teaching. So maybe like a guidance counselor.
Okay.
I think I'd be a good guidance
Because
counselor.
you tell people like it is, help get them on track. I like that.
Yep. Help
All
them
right.
plan their lives, even though I keep saying you're not going to have it all planned out.
All right, so describe yourself in 3 words and describe yourself in 3 words. The first 3 should be the words you would use, and the second 3 should be words other people would use.
Oh my gosh, these are hard.
I know.
I think it's supposed to be rapid fire.
Yeah, well,
All right. I think 3 words that I would use would be shy, which people would never say that about
Never.
me. I hate parties. Okay. Yeah, I'm like such a contradiction because like I'm shy, but I'm also loud. So
You're a shy, loud person.
I'm a shy, loud person. Creative. I would like to say that. Actually, someone knocked on my door the other day. He was like a salesperson, and I mistakenly answered the door. I don't know why I did that. And he's like, "Oh, are you an artist?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's like the highest compliment someone could give me." But it was probably because I was dressed so weird. But like, oh, okay. So yeah, creative. What else? Another word to describe myself?
Yeah, how do you describe yourself? Shy,
smart.
creative, and smart. I like that. What do you think other people would say about you?
Outgoing, loud, and I would hope people would think I'm smart.
And I would say hardworking.
Oh, thank you.
You are. You're very dedicated. Awesome. Well, Lissette Santana, it's been awesome having you here. Thank you for sharing your
great.
story and your journey and your words of wisdom. And thank you for all the amazing work you do, not only for PPL, but really on behalf of PPL and the community and all that you give back. So thanks for being here.
It was awesome.
All right, everybody. You've been listening to Unscripted with Russo. Until next time.